Hello and welcome to another episode of Short Sharp Schlocks, the YouTube show from the makers of Schlock Tactics, which is a bad movie podcast. But here we talk about movies, new and current, whether they be good, bad or otherwise. And I'm here today to talk to you about my favourite 10 movies of 2019. We are just about in the new year now, but I've had a chance to see a lot of the movies that I wanted to see from 2019. And just wanted to let you know what some of my favourites were and also find out what your favourites were as well. So, going to get right into it here. At number 10, I'm going to go for a film called Blinded by the Light. This is an English movie that came out. It's really reminded me of This Is England a lot. It's about an Asian teenager who gets heavily into Bruce Springsteen in the sort of mid to late 80s, kind of, you know, the born in the USA era of Bruce Springsteen. I'm a pretty big fan of Bruce Springsteen myself, I would say. I've got a few of his albums and my own enjoyment of Bruce Springsteen's music, but obviously I wasn't there to experience it when he was at his height. So it was kind of interesting to see perspective of someone experiencing those for the first time, and I think what it did quite well is sort of portraying that feeling of when you first hear your favourite band or your favourite singer and it feels like they're talking directly to you. So I really like that aspect of it. Of course, it was a slightly different perspective here as well, given a voice to an Asian character, which you don't get that often in major films, so that was also interesting as well. And like This Is England, they did highlight some of the problems that the immigrant families would have experienced and the racism, and there are some skinhead type characters like you get in This Is England as well. So yeah, ultimately I thought it was sort of heartwarming, charming kind of British film. Obviously a great soundtrack for Bruce Springsteen and other bands from the 80s as well. Kind of like a soft musical. So there aren't big musical numbers, but people will start singing Bruce Springsteen songs in the street and other people will just join in like they don't tend to in real life. But in this film, it was quite fun and quite charming. So that's Blinded by the Light. Number 9, a film called Ready or Not. This is one that I was looking forward to. I didn't get a chance to see it in the cinema at the time, but it was one that was on my radar last year. It stars Samara Weaving, who is quite an up-and-coming kind of scream queen. You would have seen her in Netflix The Babysitter film. Also in Mayhem with Stephen Yeun from Walking Dead fame. So those are also two great films, and I think she's really coming into her own. Ready or Not is it's kind of a Blumhouse type film. It's kind of clever slasher type of stuff. If you've seen You're Next, it's very similar to that. It's a bride-to-be. She's getting married to a rich guy who's heir apparent of a board game empire. His family are board game moguls. But then the plot being that she is going to become involved in a deadly game over the course of an evening, set in a big mansion. There's lots of funny bits. There's some very impressive gore and violence. It's just a fun all-round kind of violent, clever thriller, and Samara Weaving I think is one to watch. She's going to be a big star over the next couple of years as well. Number 8 on my list is Dr. Sleep. So I did actually do a full review of this on the channel. You can go back and check out, but of course this was the sequel to The Shining, 30 years in the making or so. A very, very belated sequel. It had a lot going against it, I think, particularly in marketing itself as The Shining, come again. Considering all of that, I did really enjoy it. There were some great ideas. The main villain in the film, Rose the Hat, as I said in my review, is really the star of the show. Ewan McGregor did nothing for me as Danny Torrance, but Rebecca Ferguson as Rose the Hat was a very memorable villain, one of the more memorable villains this year, and this whole cult of sort of misfits that live forever and have to inhale the essence of sort of telekinetic shining people, I thought was a great idea. It is too long, 2.5 hours, definitely too long, but there were some interesting ideas here. And as far as sequels to the best horror film ever go, I think it actually overachieved. Number 7 on my list, again we're going away from genre. It's mid-90s. This is Jonah Hill's directorial debut. really relatable. I mean, I'm about the same age as Jonah Hill, so it was no surprise here that I was going to see a lot of myself in this film. It's about a sort of kid growing up in the mid-90s who gets into skateboarding, finds a sort of ragtag group of fellow teenagers to fall in with, and there's not really much more of a plot to it than that. It's just, for me, it's just a lot of things happening on the screen and going, yep, tick, tick, tick. Yeah, that happened to me. I did that. I was into that. I had that poster on my wall, that sort of thing. So, I mean, it's not very plot heavy at all, but there are some great performances, and it's very well written by Jonah Hill. As far as I think a lot of people who are the similar age and grew up in that period will relate to it. Very nostalgic, great soundtrack as well, and a lot of heart as well. The Sunny Suljic, who plays the lead character in this film, understated performance here as the sort of shy 13-year-old kid. Number 6 on my list. This one is another sequel. It's Happy Deathday to You. Unfortunately, the 2U is the number 2 and the letter U, which is a shame. But this is actually a Blumhouse film, the sequel to Happy Death Day, the sort of basically Groundhog Day of horror. That's the concept. That's all you really need to know about the first film, and I really liked the first film. Thought it was really clever. This, I think, is a very strong sequel to that. It's rather than the Groundhog Day repeating, the day that you die, being stalked by a slasher. They sort of introduce parallel dimension stuff as well, which I'm always a sucker for, and everything I sort of go for has that sort of element to it usually. The alternate universe stuff. So it gets a lot more complicated, but I think it still manages to find its way and be really clever at the same time. Jessica Roth as Tree is still really great in the lead, and I think, like Samara Weaving, she's a real strong actor to look for coming up. So yeah, if you've seen the first one, I think this does more of the same, just from slightly different angles. Happy Death Day to You. Number 5 in my list is Parasite by Bong Joon-ho. Much touted, much talked about film. I only saw this about a week or so ago, so perhaps it would have been higher if I'd have seen it longer ago. Bong Joon-ho, obviously one of the greatest Korean directors. I'm a big fan of The Host, big fan of Okja, and a massive fan of Snowpiercer. I think that still remains his best film overall, but Parasite here is kind of a bit of a left turn when you consider those films. It's really not a genre film. There's no horror or fantasy elements to it. It's really just a family sort of comic drama, tragic drama. It's quite Shakespearean in the way it's all laid out. You get these 4 characters, mum, dad, and brother and sister, who sort of infiltrate their way into upper class society very cleverly by taking on different jobs in this house. And then there's a sort of a bit of a twist there as well, which I won't go into, but it sort of, I think the first act you think the film's going to be something, and then the second act it becomes something else, and the third act it becomes something else again. So it's a very unpredictable film. I think very original. Bong Joon-ho, is always been an original sort of voice from South Korea. And yeah, really, really strong performances, really unpredictable, really funny a lot of the time as well. And you'll get to the end and probably wonder what the hell have I just watched, but I think you'll be impressed. That's Bong Joon-ho's Parasite. And number 4 is Ari Aster's Midsummer. So this was also one I did a full review on the YouTube channel. Actually got over 2,000 views, so I guess you guys also had a lot of opinions on this one, or a lot of questions maybe. Check out the full review if you want to know my full thoughts. But I mean, yeah, just an absolute mind-bending, psychedelic acid trip of a film. It is a lot like The Wicker Man, but it's still its own thing, I think, as well. There's this sort of Scandinavian twist on it. A lot of the pagan folk stuff is still there, but it's a lot more druggy. Again, it's quite a trip. The most awkward sex scene of the year still. You'll know it when you see it. Florence Pugh is brilliant. Also saw her in Fighting With My Family this year. She was good in that as well. She's going to be a huge star as well. So yeah, check out my review for my full thoughts on this one. But if you've seen it, you know that it's a very special film, and yeah, I don't know what Ari Aster's going to do next after Hereditary and this, but I think everyone's going to be interested in that. Number 3 on my list is what I think is the best horror film of the year, of the entire year, and that is Jordan Peele's Us. So this is his follow-up to Get Out, obviously a massively acclaimed horror film, very original, fresh horror film, and here we have, I think, another one. I really like the doppelganger element of this film. I think that is the strongest aspect of it. It's still very funny, it's still very political, like Jordan Peele stuff all is. I would also recommend his version of The Twilight Zone that aired this year as well. That's like 10 little movies of his that he was able to do. So, but Us, I mean, excellent performance from Lupita Nyong'o, also in Little Monsters this year, which I enjoyed. It's real difficult in 2019 to craft new iconic horror characters, and Jordan Peele absolutely nailed it here. The boiler suits, the gloves, the scissors, the mask of the little boy as well. It's just a perfectly crafted horror film, perfectly crafted political satire. Love doppelgangers, love the whole twist in the film as well. It's just, yeah, it's a real strong horror film this year, and I don't think that there was a better horror film than this. So Jordan Peele's Us. Number 2 on my list, probably not a surprise to any fans of the channel and the show, and I did a review of this one as well. It was actually the first episode of Short Sharp Schlocks. That's Godzilla, King of the Monsters. So a lot of people weighed in with their thoughts on this one, and I did a whole video about that. I take on board definitely the things that were wrong with the film, that being the script and some of the acting decisions. But for me, this was everything I wanted in a kaiju film, in a monster film, a blockbuster. This was 4 of the most iconic kaiju characters being fully realized on screen, looking incredible with the effects, and just smashing the shit out of each other for over 2 hours. So, for me, some of the human characters I probably could have done without. A lot of the dialogue I probably could have done without. The plot didn't make tons of sense, but we got where we needed to go so that these characters could have their moment there on the big screen. And I've watched it a bunch of times. I've got the Blu-ray. I'm going to be enjoying it for years to come. And this year, of course, we're going to get Kong versus Godzilla, so I'm sure that's going to divide people in a way as well. But King of the Monsters, it takes the kind of the fun, more humorous style of Skull Island, and I think it was a lot of fun in the cinema, and it continues to be a lot of fun every time that I watch it. So, I'll give you the quick rundown then before we get to number 1. So, number 10 was Blinded by the Light. Number 9 was Ready or Not. Number 8, Doctor Sleep. Number 7, Mid-90s. Number 6, Happy Death Day to You. Number 5, Parasite. Number 4, Midsummer. Number 3, Us. And number 2, Godzilla, King of the Monsters. So, my number 1 film of 2019 overall is Lords of Chaos. So, it's, I think, a criminally underrated and underseen film. If you don't know about it, it was a bit of an indie flick that sort of gained traction throughout the year and did get its theatrical release. I was the one person in my screening that was watching it when it came out. I'm a bit sort of predisposed to this. I already knew the story of mayhem and the birth of Norwegian black metal. It's a story that's fascinated me for years now. And I do enjoy that type of music as well. But this is, it's an unbelievable story. I think the less you know about this film, the better going into it. Completely unbelievable story about this particular band, Mayhem, and the things that they did, the extremes they were willing to take their music to, and the consequences that it had on obviously the members of the band. It's just brilliant. Rory Culkin is brilliant as Euronymous, and Emery Cohen as Varg as well. There's a lot that's been said about the potential character assassination on that individual, but I still think they play their parts that they need to play to get where you need to go here. So obviously a great soundtrack, very funny. I don't think people give it enough credit for how funny it and it's a black metal film, and it's a black comedy as well. Laugh out loud moments, very violent moments, just the complete ups and downs of this incredible story of the birth of Norwegian black metal. So even if you don't know anything about this music, this band, the real life events here, I would say give it a watch if you like stuff like SLC punk, or those kind of alternative underground music biopics. Give it a go. I think you'll laugh. You might be horrified as well. But yeah, that's my number one film of 2019, Lords of Chaos. So of course that's what I think, but I want to know what you guys think as well. So if you like what you've heard here, give the video a like, share it around, and let me know in the comments below what your favourite films of 2019 were. Obviously, I haven't seen them all. There's a bunch that I still want to see, a bunch of horror films that I still want to see as well. But we're now in 2020, so I thought I should draw a line under it and let you guys know what I enjoyed. So yeah, subscribe to the YouTube channel. You'll know every time that we release a new episode of Short Sharp Schlocks. There will be a new episode of the podcast very soon as well. We'll be getting back to those bad movies. The last episode we did was a lot of fun. That was Arnold Schwarzenegger versus Sylvester Stallone in Last Action Hero and Demolition Man. So go back and check that episode out if you've missed it. But yeah, that has been another episode of Short Sharp Schlocks, and that was my top 10 films of 2019. My name's been Ash, and I'll see you on the next show. Bye.
It's alive, it must be.